This symposium should give an impulse. It is about crossroads. It is about the crossroad that paves the way to sustainability. It is about the crossroad that paves the way to climate compatibility in the global economy. It is about allowing the great challenge of prosperity and social development within the limits of the Earth system. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude. I'd like to express my thanks to the high-ranking speakers and panelists at today's conference, ministers, state secretaries, senior officials of the economy and society, individuals who are taking responsibility in their societies for the transformation towards sustainability, and individuals that take international responsibility to ensure that the transformation to sustainability can succeed. We will be expecting Chancellor Merkel in a few minutes, who will present her position on low-carbon transformation. We therefore hope that we may get a discussion started today that will continue to be instrumental in the direction of Rio and the G20 meetings, and for important ideas of low-carbon transformation to be discussed internationally. Some preliminary observations on sustainability transformation. There are always options. In this case, we have three options that we face when it comes to development paths in the world economy. We have the option to operate with business as usual, and in this case, we would relatively quickly end up on an adjustment path. The 2-degree target, which has been internationally agreed upon, by no means would we reach. We would end up in a world economy characterized by global distribution conflicts, global resource conflicts, and a high degree of uncertainty in the economy and society. We would push the cost of this development path off to the next generation. And even though we know Nicholas Stern, who is here in this room, has done the math, and many others have also confirmed his calculations, early investment in the prevention of climate change is much cheaper than investing in the future to adapt to dangerous climate change. The adjustment path is an option, a bad option. We have a second option that I have often heard about, which I discussed recently when I was in the US on the topic of low-carbon transformation strategies. Geoengineering was the theme, the idea that the transformation to sustainability is complicated and we are not technologically able to cope with it. The perspective of the geoengineering debate is cool the Earth down artificially, costs unknown, risks incalculable. The second path is theoretically available to us. The third path, which is available to us, is the one we want to discuss today. We want to discuss the different paths of this third option. It is about the transformation to sustainability. It is about the transformation to climate compatibility. The key words that characterize this path are the following. In order to remain in the 2-degree corridor, which is strongly commended by scientists and climate researchers, we must act on the most important international shifting in favor of climate compatibility over the next decade. By mid-century, we will have to set substantial decarbonisation of our economies in motion worldwide. We will have to reconstruct in the direction of low-carbon transformation in the energy systems, in urban systems and urban areas, as well as in correlation to our land use systems. In this scenario, the third scenario, would be the subject of how we create wealth and security and social development within the limits of the Earth's system, the theme for the upcoming decades, perhaps even the 21st century. The Scientific Advisory Board, Global Environmental Change, recommends that the federal government and many other stakeholders evolve in this exact direction. We consider this third path to be the only responsible one. Last April, we presented a study to the Scientific Advisory Board, Global Environmental Change, in which we discussed and investigated these pathways to sustainability, and I want to outline some key words in this context. We compare the transformation transformation to global climate compatibility, with two other major transformations in the history of mankind. The industrial transformation 250 years ago, which capitalized on a fossil energy system that brought a tremendous acceleration of innovation along with it, but has now brought us to the brink of the Earth system, and therefore the growth pattern must be changed. And secondly, the Neolithic revolution, in other words, the invention of agriculture and animal husbandry by the human race 10,000 years ago. What must now take place is a transformation that allows for 9 billion people to operate within the limits of the Earth system, a major transformation.
Die uns erlaubt, für 9 Milliarden Menschen in den Grenzen des Erdsystems zu agieren, eine große Transformation.
When we presented and introduced our reports to both Ministers for Environment, Research and Science, Frau Schavan and Herr Röttgen, both said what we have just outlined. This is a civilizational thrust of humanity, and I think both are right. There is a civilizational thrust of mankind which is about a process of change, which requires technological innovation, social innovation, and engineering-driven innovation. It is not just about the transformation of our economic sectors. It is about a system of incentive, an institutional framework and a building of international cooperation which is necessary so that we can accomplish this great transformation. The results of our study were optimistically justified, but of course open to procedures. We've come to the conclusion that the essential elements needed to make this transformation are available. Kant would speak of the conditions of possibility. The conditions of the possibility to implement this transformation exist, which is good news. If we look back and recall the conference in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro, the conditions we would have needed to make such a transformation were not yet available. We believe that we now have the elements to progress towards transformation. I want to rename some of the key elements, and we will intensively discuss all these elements during the course of this day. We have performed an assessment on the basis of scientific literature which is available worldwide and which relates to the technologies we need for the low-carbon transformation in the energy sector, in cities and in land use areas. And the result is that from our perspective, we have the technologies available, or we can describe the innovation paths that we need in order to make transformation possible. This is a very important result, because if we did not have the technology, then even with all the strength of the world, we could not lead it to its goal. We have the technological means to solve the problem. The second element is at least as important. We need key players that are driving the transformation in all spheres of economy and society, and we show in our study that the number of players in the economy, in the world economy, the number of governments that go in such a direction, the number of cities that go in the direction of low-carbon cities, decarbonisation, has increased worldwide or has radically developed over the last 5 to 6 years. The number of scientists working on all these transformation issues, creating the knowledge base for the transformation, is increasing. It must be the number of key players, the agents of change. From our perspective, they have reached a critical level and can facilitate transformation. It is by no means automatic, but we have reached a critical level nonetheless. In our study, we talk about tipping points in the world economic system. Tipping point means the old pattern is still there, but the new growth pattern is emerging and will require efforts and initiatives to put a tipping point in the right direction. Let me name some of the areas in which we see these tipping points. In recent months, I've done a great deal of work at the World Bank. Nicholas Stone was chief economist of the World Bank for several years. The World Bank has oriented itself like never before in the direction of green transformation, green energy systems, and green investments. This is an important change. A tipping point could be reached here. German energy policy is also such a tipping point situation. We will attempt to achieve decarbonisation of the energy system in Germany over the next 4 decades, and we are trying to accomplish that on the basis of renewable energies. Such a tipping point in one of the most industrialised countries in the world may be important for global transformation. We see substantial investment in the green area, namely the low-carbon area in China. We see that the Chinese government, China's economy is moving in that direction. A new discussion. I am a member of the China Council for International Cooperation on Environment and Development of the Chinese government. We started the very first discussions of low-carbon development in China 6 to 7 years ago. China is now a big investor in this area, a tipping point of the situation. So the number of players necessary to promote a transformation has reached a critical level, a critical size. However, they are not yet sufficient to make the transformation irreversible. It will now be discussed how we can make the transformation irreversible. A third element is the new social models that arise. Societies, businesses and companies are all based on models. Models in the context of new welfare models and welfare concepts. Low carbon growths, low carbon prosperity. These principles, these models are now created in many places in the world. They are developed at the OECD. They will be promoted by the World Bank. They are pushed by the German Development Cooperation. Chinese research institutions, in collaboration with many researchers from around the world, are also working on this. So today we have models available that will help us to refocus our economy and society for a better understanding of this, that is to say, to organize prosperity and development within the limits of the Earth system. And finally, we come to the conclusion in our study. Based on the evaluation of existing literature, we can describe instruments, political tools that we needed for transformation very well. We have made great progress since the last major environmental and development conference in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro. For those of you who were there, you will recall that Agenda 21 was a pretty thick document with nearly 200 pages. If one adopts a 200-page political document, then that means very clearly that we have not yet understood what the priorities look like and what one must do to organize this transformation. We have come much further here. We have the tools we need in the macroeconomic area, the research and development area. We know where we would have to invest considerably in order to translate research and development processes into rapid innovation. Therefore, the elements of the transformation, as a result of our considerations, are existent, but the ambition we need to make this transformation irreversible, that's still not high enough. If one calculates and extrapolates the current efforts and the progress I have described here, then one comes to the conclusion that we cannot reach these 2 degrees, even under the present conditions and with all the advances that we have already made. That means there must be a speeding up of the process, a scaling of the process. It is important that we forge alliances to help us make this transformation irreversible. It is only under these conditions that we will manage to do it within the limits of the Earth system and see 9 billion people grow in welfare by the middle and end of the century. 3 key challenges seem to me to be in the center of the current situation, and they will be addressed by our panel. The first major challenge is that the climate negotiation process is essential. We must not force efforts back in any way in order to bring this process to success. But we have also learned that the climate negotiation process is slow and vast. And what we therefore need, and for which we plead, and why we brought people from 10 different countries together here today, for which the speaker and the participants of the panel are concerned, what we need from our perspective are partnerships for the climate-friendly transformation that allow acceleration, the pooling of tools, and the pooling of investments. What types of activities would help us get the process of transformation of climate compatibility in order in which we already find ourselves, so that it may be irreversible? That is the question we want to discuss today. We need new partnerships, acceleration, focus, and demonstrative models so that climate compatibility can be merged together with economic development, competitiveness, and employment. This requires creation of examples, and we hope that we can discuss today examples that will help us progress in this discussion process. We have a second, very big challenge which requires a serious change in perspective. It is about a change of perspective in which long-term interests have to be enforced against short-term interests. This is a fundamental problem, an important problem. All the technologies in the world cannot help us if we do not break down this long-term, short-term problem. One would find very few representatives and very few observers in business, politics, or science today who would not agree if one argues that we must have produced a sustainable economy by the mid-2030s or 2040s by all means that is then viable within the limits of the Earth system. No one doubts that, but the turning point from short-term to long-term has not yet been organized. It therefore requires a change in direction. Transformation means a change in direction. We need a change oriented to the future, and we must overcome what John Schellnhuber called the dictatorship of the present in one of his discussion contributions. We have to enforce future interests. Future generations claim their rights within the limits of the Earth and want to enjoy prosperity that has become self-evident for us. This is about leadership. It is about responsibility and systematic orientation. The third challenge, which seems to me to be quite essential, will certainly be addressed and discussed today. It is about overcoming the divisions of discussions, one in which leads to the global debt crisis and the other leading transformation to sustainability. We must succeed in bringing these two strands of discussions, the financial crisis, debt crisis, the economic crisis, and the debate about the future of the world economy within the limits of the Earth system, and the sustainability debate together into one context. The initiatives we take to make a sustainable world economy must also simultaneously get the financial debt crisis under control. We will most definitely discuss this today. Let me conclude my considerations. In our report, we talk about the transition to sustainability on the basis of a social contract. Social contract means that the transition to the world economy may not be imposed. It cannot be decreed. It is also not easy to remove it from market dynamics. It needs to emerge in the interplay of economy, society, and politics. The building blocks of such a social contract are pretty straightforward and clear. It is about accepting the limits of the Earth system, putting the rights of future generations into account, and finding a fair compromise in the transition to sustainability within and between our societies. That is what we want to argue about today. That is what we want to discuss today, and I cordially welcome you once again on behalf of the German Advisory Council on Global Change. Thank you very much.
Herzlichen Dank.